You know that old adage, do as I say, not as I do? That that's gonna apply to today's video, I think. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU, here for another legacy video. And we're just gonna start with the initial deck list I was sent. So Connor sent me this interesting idea of Infernal Plunge with some zero cost red creatures. The idea being that off a single red source, you have the capability of getting to 3 mana and accelerating out your powerful cards. Um, this one obviously needs some polish. There's no sideboard here, but this is the starting idea. And I want to talk about how I tuned this and why I tuned this. And as a starting point, I'm going to make sure that you all conceptually understand something about building any sort of Stompy deck list. So a Stompy deck list at its core is going to be roughly 50% mana, give or take a little in either direction. But you need a lot of mana if you are going to attempt to be playing 3-drops on turn 1. So counting the stuff that is traditionally in the deck list, we're starting at about 26, and those Infernal Plunges get us to that magical number of 30. One of the inherent problems of this deck list, though, is that when we count the 0-drops that are kind of a part of the mana base of this deck list, it's 38. And that presents a real problem. Like, that's a lot, even for the standards of this deck. So every card like this that you put in your deck list trying to support something else is a card that is not actually one of the win conditions of the deck. And as a secondary problem, you are already playing pitch cards in your deck without something like the One Ring or another source of card advantage to make up for that. So, like, Fury plus Chrome Mox plus Infernal Plunge, like, generally speaking, this is just a lot. And presumably we want to put our Chalice on 1, right? Which means that we are going to shut off this card. So we're going to have some problems to solve with deck building. Now, in all fairness, Gut does give us some additional ways to use our 0-drop creatures. Gut triggers whenever you attack, not when Gut attacks. So if you play a turn 1 Rograkh, for example, and then play Gut on turn 2, you are just immediately turning Rograkh or, Chromox or whatever into a 4/1 menace skeleton. And that's perfectly fine and good. So we have to find a way to get more finishers in the deck list, and we have to find a way to decrease the number of slots in this deck list that are being dedicated to the mana. And it is going to be difficult to solve both of those. So after giving this deck some love, this is what I've come up with. So the first thing you'll notice is that I've gone down to 4 of the 0-drops. I just physically don't think that the deck can support 8 of them. And what I've done instead is I have gone up on the number of other token producers that are in this deck list. Our goal is not always to convert Infernal Plunge, to convert a 0-drop into 3 mana with Infernal Plunge. It is play a 3-drop, get some initial value off of it, then sack a token to have the next thing coming. One of the things that these Moon Stompy decks want to do is just increase the tempo of the game. Like, you want to end the game before your opponent has their time to cantrip, their time to find their board wipe, the time to complete their combo, and Infernal Plunge can work towards that. Now, notably, Infernal Plunge is a sorcery, so it's not like we can just sack the Fury while the Evoke trigger is on the stack for some super, super gross technology. But the other thing I wanted to do with Infernal Plunge is when this spell resolves, I want my 3-drops to have the highest possible impact on the game. So I have added a playset of Magus of the Moon into the deck here. Magus of the Moon and Blood Moon have gotten slightly worse since the release of the Lord of the Rings set, where we got the like Island Cyclers and Swamp Cyclers attached to very, very good spells. So it's not like they are always going to be lights out, but our ability to come out of the gates swinging is going to be very, very high with this deck. If Infernal Plunge was not a part of this deck list could probably support Cavern of Souls, as coincidentally, most of the creatures that are in this deck are goblins. So we have incorporated some old technology alongside some new technology to help out with the fact that more slots than normal are going to be dedicated to the mana side of our deck. I am playing a whole bunch of copies of Sundering Eruption. This is a strong card. It can destroy target land. So if our opponent has one basic of a given color and they, throw it out there to get around the Blood Moon, we can then take away that toy. It's possible that I should try to squeeze in a Shatterskull Smashing or two in here in addition to what I already have. My deck isn't the best on defensive options. I've got 4 Furies. I've got a couple of Pyrokinesis in the sideboard. Let's play one. Bam. I don't want to get too greedy with these because I am still an Ancient Tomb deck at the end of the day, but if I am playing 8 Moon Effects in the 75, that mitigates some of that life loss anyway. So yeah, let's see how Infernal Plunge performs. I'm skeptical, but let's be real. Most of the time when I sit down with anything that looks like this, I tend to at least do okay. So hopefully it turns out all right. Should you need your copies of Infernal Plunge or maybe some cute new critters from Bloomborough, please consider checking out my sponsor, TOAMagic.com. Tales of Adventure is an awesome store. Anytime you order online, you get free shipping, and they do tend to show up to most major in-person events, at least the larger ones. Promo code ThrabenU will save you 5% on your order as well. Let's take the plunge. Well, we have a hand of Magic the Gathering cards. I believe that I am legally obligated to keep this, since this does the thing that the donor wanted to see in action. Note that I do not really believe that this is a keep. This is a for content keep. Ah, fuck. It doesn't matter. We're dead. GG's. Well played. Alright. So we're getting griefed. Pretty sure taking Spirit Guide is wrong, but it shouldn't matter. I'm just going to die. Like, Infernal Plunge is the best card in my hand. My opponent is just going to reanimate a Spy, and it's irrelevant, but, So, my opponent is going to mill their entire deck. I'm just going to take a quick peek, see if there's anything interesting, and then my opponent is going to just reanimate a Thassa's Oracle, and I am going to die. So I'm just going to concede and save the 30 seconds. Leyline in Disruptor Flute in Unlicensed Hearse in Magus of the Moon, probably in. We're going to board out a shit ton of cards. Fury has very limited utility. I'm going to get rid of that. Am I cutting these 8? Yeah. Yeah, I think I am. Yeah, this is just a turn 0 matchup, so I don't know. I could keep them and just try to increase my chance of going turn 1 Blood Moon when I'm on the play. That, I guess, is reasonable. I do that. I am doing... No, I just want 2 colorless mana on turn 1. No, I think this needs to be speed bump into kill. I don't think I get to fuck around with this here. Yes. Oh, this hand is very good. I believe that I'm going to lead on Magus of the Moon. It has power and toughness. And I don't necessarily want to play 2 of the same type of card in case we run into some sort of narrow anti-enchantment card. Alright, bam. Yeah. The other thing this does is it stops me from eating Grief plus Reanimate. Maybe I take 3 to Sundering Eruption on 1, so I can't lose this land to a Grief. But I guess I'm trying to hold this and like use it to blow up my opponent's red sources. Send it. 18. Opponent gets to save some life here. Alright, so this is now a land. Don't have to pay life for it. I get to crash in for 3. Goblin Friend. 15. So my opponent will be now discarding directly to exile. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Send it. Goblins get big. Alright, there we go. Disruptor Flute is a little worse on the draw. I think I'm still going to keep it. I basically have to mulligan to a leyline hand. Like, this is just not good enough on the draw. Opponent did mulligan themselves. Not good enough on the draw. Opponent has kept their 6. We will be going to 5. This is great. I think this land is always going back. It's a little harder from there. I think I am going to keep the Blood Moon and the Spirit Guide. I think I want this backed by Blood Moon. Alright, cool. Just a tapped land. So, yeah, that's the cost of doing business with playing Leylines in your deck. The next one is not nearly as good. So we need land plus threat now. It's hard for us to lose. It's not impossible. Lotus Petal can still open my opponent up to, like, reanimating something. There are sometimes juke win conditions. You know, a Goblin Charbelcher, for example, is a perfectly reasonable thing that could beat me. A Disruptor Flute would cover that axis. But I am at least getting another draw step here. Another Blood Moon is not currently castable. Ancient Tomb is a mountain right now. I guess it is also possible for my opponent to start hard casting small creatures and targeting me with stuff. Alright. Do I want redundant Blood Moon in play? I don't have Fury in my deck. Chrome Mox is not relevant. My stuff caps out at 3. So yes, I do. My opponent's deck does not appear to be green enough to play Force of Vigor. For what that's worth. A Echoing Truth type card could take out 2 Blood Moons at the same time. That is not what I am looking for. And this is a great example of why you don't tend to keep hands that are just a lock piece. You really want a lock piece plus threat hand. That was not really an option here given how critical Leyline of the Void is to this matchup because it is such a warped matchup. Alright, we are getting some action here. There is a Dark Ritual. Target opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Sure. I will sacrifice a Blood Moon. Very glad I played out the extra. Is that a new card? Feels like no. Okay. So now that's a weird spot. My opponent has used 1 Lotus Petal already. I think I just sacrificed the Blood Moon. I think I keep the Leyline. But it's close. I just have a higher chance of redrawing a Blood Moon than I have a chance of drawing a way to get a new Leyline in play. Hello, loyal soldier. Welcome to the front lines, bud. It's turn 6 and I have not done any points of damage to my opponent yet. That is not ideal, obviously. I mean, yeah, I'll cast that. Look, sometimes you just gotta do the Simian Spirit Guide thing. Cast, blow up a land, or you can float your mana. Obviously no basic, and I don't expect that anything is going to happen with that floating mana. Oh, sure. Marginal deck thinning. They are just going to take a bad draw out of their deck and send it directly to exile. Yep. It's just another land. Entering tapped. There we go. That's a real threat. This is the sort of thing that I need to actually close out this game. We're going to get 3 damage in this turn, and then real amounts of damage every turn for the rest of the game. At this point, I would like to draw another lock piece of some kind. Another land destruction spell would be fully fine. We'll take a war boss. That means my opponent is definitely dead next turn. So get 2 friends. Send in with everybody. Rabble Master gets big. I don't believe this is lethal yet. Opponent's at 5. So, do we luck out? We luck out and win the match. On paper, I don't think we win that one on average. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and I could say all sorts of great things about them, but I'm just going to point to this number. I have 488 deck lists stored on this site. That should give you a feel for how I feel about this website. And if you were to go to my profile, you could see all the deck lists that I'm messing around with, including my EDH decks, and you can even see some of the deck lists I record with before they hit the channel. Ooh. Okay. This sort of hand happens when your deck is 50% mana. I don't think we keep a Sundering Eruption, Destroy Your Lands hand. That's just conceptually not what I want to be doing. Alright, so, the fuck am I doing here? My brain wants me to just bottom gut Chrome Mox, put Rog under it so that Rog is not in my deck, and just play Rabblemaster into Warboss into Broadside. I can play Rog and Rabblemaster into Gut, and that is also pretty good. But I think I'm just into pressure, better pressure, win. My hand falls apart if my opponent Force of Wills, Chrome Mox, or Wastelands me for that matter. Hour of Destiny, it is Eldrazi, sure. So, Chrome Mox. Rog goes under, Ancient Tomb, Rabble Boy, hit for 1. Opponent goes to 19. They get their Devour of Destiny trigger to try to select. The hope here is that the exact card Lotus Petal is not in their hand. If Lotus Petal is not in their hand, I think my odds of victory are very high. If they have a turn 1 Lotus Petal and can play like turn 1 Glaring Fleshraker, things get a little more dicey. But I guess I have Broadside, so I could kill it if they just did a pass the turn line with it. It still feels like Lotus Petal is a fundamental card here. Alright, so they are just playing a Wastegate Battle Mage, sure. I think I need to put the Broadside into play so that I don't potentially lose it to a Thought-Knot Seer. That would be devastating when I'm this far ahead. We'll do this. Make my creature. Send in with everyone. Let the Gobble trigger resolve. Broadside, target this. Throw a Goblin token. And my opponent still takes 8. Going to 11. I am likely presenting lethal on my own turn. With Glaring Fleshraker still being one of the scariest things here. I guess a Kozilek's command is also, like, not the best. Alright, my opponent just concedes. That's fair. Magus of the Moon, you're up, bud. Pyrokinesis, get the fuck in here. I think that's all we're doing, so I need 4 cards. Playing a turn 1 Blood Moon is one of the most important things that I can do in this specific matchup, so I don't think I'm going to mess with these 8 cards. Gotta have Menace. No. Gut feels expendable, and I'll drop 1 Goblin. This is turn 2 on the draw, Magus of the Moon. That's just okay. The problem with it is that my opponent has the ability to Thought-Knot Seer or Glaring Fleshraker plus something else before I do anything. I think I'm going to fish when I'm on the draw. I think this matchup is probably really bad on the draw. Chrome Mox, Imprint, Plunge, turn my opponent's Soul Land into a basic Wastes, and repeat the following turn. I evaluate this hand as playable but bad. I'm going to go deeper. I am rewarded. Ancient Tomb, Chrome Mox, Imprint, Spirit Guide, cast Blood Moon, keep Sundering Eruption to blow up a basic if my opponent gets one. I think I don't keep a removal spell here, and I just believe in my deck to beat a 2-2 if my opponent plays one on turn 1. Yeah. Okay, we've got the Eldrazi Temple into a 2-2. This is exactly what I just talked about. Well, there's a card to put under a Chrome Mox, right? Imprint Rog, Ancient Tomb, Blood Moon. And I have 2-2 to trade with 2-2 in theory. So my opponent potentially has a basic Wastes and or a basic Forest in this deck list that could allow them to cast most of their spells. The vast majority of the current Eldrazi creature base requires actual factual colorless mana. Infernal Plunge right on time. We play this on the land side. Cast a Spirit Guide. And here, like, we see the problem with Rog and Infernal Plunge not being reasonable standalone cards. You holding back? Yeah, they're holding back. I'm upset that Infernal Plunge is currently good. Alright. Sacrifice a creature other than Infernal Plunge. Didn't know Infernal Plunge was a creature, to be honest. Then we'll Fury and nuke the It That Heralds the End. Yeah, I was gonna say this makes me worse against Dismember. Infernal Plunge was a trap after all. My opponent got Infernal Plunge, Spirit Guide, and Fury for their Dismember, and It That Heralds the End. Whatever, I top decked another threat. We'll make a Goblin get in for one. My opponent had another Dismember, but messed up. Priority stops. Yep, that's all red mana. Rog is not a reasonable card here. I am not going to play it until I have a little bit more mana. Like, it is possible that it matters more as a pitch card for Fury. If I draw Gut, I can play Rog and Gut at the same time. So that opens up Sowing Mycospawn? Yep. Which can give my opponent a basic Wastes or a basic Forest, potentially. It is a basic Wastes. So this game is going to fall apart very quickly. I need my opponent to block. Send it. Fuck yeah! This is so good. So, there's a damage marked on this creature. Now I Fury, pitch Rog. We do 2 damage on the It That Heralds the End and put 2 more damage on Sowing Mycospawn. It's currently a 4/4. But as soon as It That Heralds the End leaves play, this Anthem effect goes away, and my opponent gets hyper punished for their bad block. Now, my opponent is playing Magic the Gathering now, unfortunately. So I still think I am very much not favored. Yeah, that thing is going to eat me alive. Well, my opponent did not attack. So I appreciate that. That was very kind of them. Sure. Yeah. White. Okay, so Eldrazi Linebreaker trigger. We get haste here. I get attacked for 8. I am literally dead next turn. Cool. I'll play a Magus and pass. I should be dead, though. Sure, you may have my Chrome Mox. My opponent just gives this haste. They can hit me for just 6. Like, I can survive, but then I just don't win from this position. I can't deal 10 to my opponent in a single go. Not even with that. I can get 2 in, throw for 2. Yeah, so the Rogs and Infernal Plunges and stuff cost me dearly. Just not having standalone threats, throwing away an extra card to Dismember, missing out on damage. I still fully believe that the easiest way to win this matchup is just Blood Mooning my opponent, like I did. I'm going to keep this configuration, but, you know. Goblin Rabblemaster backed by a pile of land destruction. That is acceptable. And note that my opponent did miss a combat step. That they had a haste creature, so it was worse than it even looked. So, let's do the thing. Opponent is on a mulligan to 6. And again, the Eldrazi deck has very few ways of making super impactful turn 1 plays. So a decent portion of the time we kind of get a pass here. That is a Dismember. Sure. Well, that makes my hand significantly worse. We are the single threat hand. My opponent goes to 14. Ow. Yes. Ow again. Blow up a land. And we are converting a soul land into a regular land at the cost of making a top-decked Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon worse. That is incredibly good for me. Sure, that's fine. We will play an Ancient Tomb. I think I blow up my opponent's colorless mana. They are not guaranteed to have more colorless mana. And this technically allows me to push 1 damage as well. It just doesn't feel good. So I am fully at the mercy of the top of my deck here. Okay, that is all green mana. I don't think you're casting anything. Alright, opponent is attacking me back. I'm losing my mind, as that is not a card with real amounts of power and toughness. It is what it is. 12. This is second red in hand for Fury. But I think I am just casting this card. I don't think I need to play City of Traders. Yeah. There's a consideration to playing this out for Thought Not Seer specifically. I don't think I'm going to do that. Alright, there's actual factual colorless mana. There's an argument that my opponent should just knock me off of red here rather than casting something. Never mind, they can do both. I very strongly feel like that is the wrong play. Holy shit. God damn it. These cards are so fucking bad. Pass turn, lose. Alright, there's the Glaring Fleshbreaker. And no follow-up play? Wild. Alright, at least my opponent is not pressuring my life total, so that if I draw a Fury, I have a real chance to stay in this game. Alright, so I cast this. I'll Infernal Plunge it to get my red. 3, 4, and 5. Cast the Fury. I'm gonna go 2 there, and 2 there. I'm gonna leave the Sowing Mycospawn. It's a little annoying, but I think I'm just going to take 2 bodies out of play immediately. This reduces the amount of mana my opponent has access to. Next turn, I'll probably attack with everything. I don't think attack this turn makes sense. I could have tried to have gotten greedier, but I think regular blocks get involved with this, and the turn doesn't actually end up as good. Alright, this is a terrible play. This is objectively a very bad play. So my opponent has no reason to wasteland a tapped land before they see their draw step. They have just knocked themselves down a mana when I already knocked them down 2 mana, and they are not giving themselves like the ability to make choices after making more decisions. Sure. Alright, there is a new Glaring Fleshraker. It is horrific for me. There's red mana. I am going to need that. I unfortunately have to pass the turn here and just let my opponent go wild. So I will just basically instantly lose to a Kozilek's Command. That is a Kozilek's Command. Unsure if the exile-based mode is better or worse than the draw-based mode. It depends on what's left in my opponent's hand. I'm almost certainly dead next turn to my opponent casting literally any spell. I'm going to declare no blocks, take 5, and hope that I'm not dead right now. Yeah, that'll do just fine. Yeah, so having the Rogs and the Infernal Plunges in my deck almost certainly cost me this match, and my opponent made a bunch of objective errors, but when I am top decking things that look like this, I can't punish those errors. I just have no agency. Okay. Note the 2 copies of Infernal Plunge that are not allowing me to cast my spells. This is going to be a keep. The turn 1 is Chrome Mox, this, City, Rabble into Broadside. If Chrome Mox eats it, I need Mountain. So I think I keep and just get rid of Fury. Despite, you know, some of this awkwardness in terms of mana count. I do have to just, like, accept that some portion of the time I just get, like, griefed and lose Chrome Mox. We're going to play a Dazable Chrome Mox first. Cool. Bye, Rog. Hello, City of Traders. Hello, Goblin Friend. Removal spell? Yeah, okay, I was gonna say, like, there's no way, right? Swords, sure. A blue-white control deck, a Bant Nadu deck. Beans, sure. Beans are fine. Gut, you're a little late. Rabble Boy returns. Hand tripping, Force of Will, you got it. I think my opponent is heavily favored in the current game. I'll do what I can. My ideal is Broadside lives, Gut triggers next turn. I find that unlikely to happen. I'm just going to play Gut this turn then, and let Gut eat the next removal spell and hopefully keep Broadside. Alright. Yep. We planned for that. So my plan is get lucky, draw Blood Moon, opponent does not have a Force of Will effect, I Blood Moon them off their colors, and I win. That's the conceptual plan. That's where I want to be going. My opponent will likely be able to 1-for-1 me forever. That's kind of what Up the Beanstalk allows you to do, and a second copy of Up the Beanstalk would be incredibly scary. I'm also not well equipped to beat an Uro or equivalent if that ends up happening. Ugh. That basic is real good. Fuck. Timing. This is now Prismatic Ending bait, I think. Fuck. Alright. Sure. We are keeping the hits rolling for now, but eventually I'm going to start drawing Rogs and Infernal Plunges that are not live cards, and it's going to be frustrating. But, you know, until then, fucking stop! Stop it! I have so much to live for. There's just another land drop. Round Seal main deck. That's a sign of a healthy metagame, right? We've got no shuffle. What do we have? Uro, Teferi. Pass turn, sure. Cast Broadside. It's not a particularly good Broadside. I think it's marginally better than casting Simian Spirit Guide. Very marginally. Because if I draw Fury, I can play land and exile Simian Spirit Guide to hard cast a Fury. That is a Leyline Binding in response to the Broadside, rather than letting it hit play. My opponent is going to take out my Chrome Mox, which is, like, totally fine. Yeah, hit you for 2. That feels like a slightly weird choice. So, if I were in my opponent's perspective, my guess would be that some number of cards in my hand are going to be mana sources. Like, I have played a threat every turn this game, and it's turn 8 now. Like, it is just mathematically incredibly likely that I am sitting on 1 or more mana sources, so that I am actually going to be able to play my next threat. I don't think I like their play there. It might not matter. Cantripping Terminus. You've got it. Sad threat time. But you do what you gotta do, right? And I will be able to play every threat that I top deck from here. Another Terminus, sure. These cantrips, so like the Terminus as a 1-for-1 trade is not actually bad for my opponent. So, like, they are pulling further and further ahead. Now, they just need to find a win condition and this game is over. What was that? Oh, cycling a Xander's Lounge. Hello. Welcome back, friend. Thank you for your service. Alright, we've got a threat in play. That is representing... God damn it, Infernal Plunge. That is representing any of the cool cards in my opponent's graveyard. So, like, that can just turn into, you know, a cantripping Terminus again. Guess I'll play this. Yeah, but this not being a live card here is incredibly relevant. Oh! What just happened? Island. It did enter untapped. Couldn't put triggered ability from Mystic Sanctuary on the stack. Why? There's no Blood Moon in play. Oh, it's their own fucking ground seal. Okay. Yep. Get in there, Spirit Guide, buddy. So, how many Force of Wills have I seen? I've seen 3 of the 4 Force of Wills. I think I am okay casting a Simian Spirit Guide then. It's awkward if the last Force of Will is in hand and then my opponent cantrips towards another removal spell, but I don't know that 2 damage a turn is enough pressure on this current board. Like, I don't know exactly which threats my opponent is cantripping toward, but some sort of, you know, 4th Aerlinga's Uro 1 ring sort of card will certainly beat me right now. That is a Magic the Gathering card. I think that's what I have to say about that one. Opponent goes to 6. I will cast this card. It does give my opponent red for 4th Aerlingas. This land presumably gives them red. More importantly, this is shutting off an Uro from graveyard. Okay. There's a basic forest. 6. Opponent just casually floating 6. You're just going to leyline binding this after it has resolved? Yes. Yep. I mean, but that's a removal spell that's not going at one of my creatures, right? So that is overall positive. All right. Am I eating a 3rd Terminus? I am not. Is there a Supreme Verdict or equivalent? This is the turn, right? Like, this is the big turn. My opponent fetched red, so this is probably 4th Aerlingas, which I imagine just kills me from 20. Their lands are bouncing around, so IDK. Yeah, it is. X equals 7. This is 14 damage. Nope. I have an out to this. All right. I'm at 14. I need to draw the creatures except flying creatures can't block thing. I did not. If I attack, my opponent blocks 2. I take 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 on the backswing. I pass turn here and hope that they don't try to kill me. Yeah, I think I lost this one due to Infernal Plunge. Like, if this is a live card, I am still very much in this game. And probably win. That does it, though. That puts my opponent out of immediate burn range. I'm going to save myself a minute here and just concede. So I like Magus of the Moon. I like Unlicensed Hearse. I think I'm past the point of pretending that this is good. I need 2 more cards to fill. I'll play 2 Disruptor Flute. Like, there are a couple of very specific cards that I know I can name. Most notably, I can name Terminus with the Terminus trigger on the stack, and that is pretty devastating. So, no mana here. This is a slow hand, which I don't love. I will be keeping it. The easiest way to win is resolve Magus on turn 2 and have that stick around, which means keeping Spirit Guide. I think I'll put back Sundering Eruption. It's just likely to cost me life right now. And I expect this game to go long enough that threat density matters. This represents Swords to Plowshares, making playing Magus this turn awkward. Unless I get my opponent to bite on Chrome Mox. Negative. I am going to play Broadside here rather than Magus and let Broadside eat Swords to Plowshares. Or Force of Will. Fantastic. Magus of the Moon is a card that I want to slam as soon as possible, but doing it into open Tundra just felt too risky. Sure. I was going to Prismatic Ending my Chrome Mox. That's fine. Hopefully I draw a mana source. I did. This is a Magus of the Moon moment. My opponent has used a Force of Will. Swords to Plowshares is not available. All right, we're in play. Game's not over, but this is really damn good. Nice. Cool. Yeah, we're getting in there. We get to hit for 4. I am not throwing Magus of the Moon, just before anybody asks. Opponent's at 15. Probably just drew a Terminus, which means they did not draw a land. Yeah, fantastic. The Blood Moon effects get slightly worse on the draw, but I still think that they are good enough that I don't adjust those numbers at all. This is not my ideal, but I don't think I get to throw this one back. At least one of these Sundering Eruptions is probably just a land here. And I will play it as such and pass the turn. As of right now, Fury is probably going under the Chrome Mox. I would love to just draw a Soul Land, so that is not a thing that I have to actively think about. But we didn't. Alright, Fury goes under. I am always playing Mountain. Think this one first. Think this one first. Swords just removes everything else here cleanly in a way that I don't love. Okay. My opponent has access to white mana. So getting the Blood Moon out, it might be a second Terminus. So getting this out of play is possible. I would now like to do everything that I can to insulate my Blood Moon effects. I think that means playing Magus here. A little weird, like Swords is online. Don't want this going out of play. Maybe it's more important to just play a Rabble Master, though. Like, let Rabblemaster eat swords, and then Magus is backup for Blood Moon beyond that. Nice. Like, I can see the lines in the matrix, you know? Now, whether or not I start playing around a second one is another thing. I don't think I'll play around second swords. Okay. Okay, cool. So now I get to start getting more serious with pressure. Not expecting a white flash creature here, so Magus of the Moon attack should be safe. And the white flash creature that does exist is a 1/2, the Doorkeeper Thrall. If I make it to my second main... Oh, never mind. I'm just going to do this. Make a token. Crash in. Opponent goes to 8. I will just cast the Blood Moon. Again, we just want to insulate as much as possible from my opponent getting out of this soft lock. Yep, that's fine. And then I'll pass the turn. We suspect 2 of the cards in my opponent's hand are Terminus. That's not going to be easily hardcastable this game, and we put up the W. That was honestly a great match for showcasing sequencing. Hello! If you find that you're regularly enjoying my content and watching most or all of my videos, please consider supporting me financially if you're in the position to do so. If you're not, that's perfectly fine and good. Likes, comments, sharing my videos with friends, all that stuff means a lot. But if you are in the financial position to support me, my website can tell you all the different ways that you can do that. You can become a YouTube member or support me on Patreon. Becoming a YouTube member gives you early access to videos, and doing either one of those gets you access to my Discord server as well. Okay. This is another hand that is a mulligan, but we're going to keep to see what it does for the purposes of content. Like, this is an Infernal Plunge Goblin Rabblemaster hand. The innate issue is that it does not play the follow-up threats. But let's show what this looks like. We are playing against Eldrazi here. And this is what my opponent sends to exile. So this is one of the best cards in the deck. So our opponent probably has one. And then we just see them sending away a bunch of mana sources. They probably don't have an Ancient Tomb if they got rid of Chalice. So they've got 4 unknown cards here. It is another Infernal Plunge. Okay, shit just got weird, folks. Cast Rog. Infernal Plunge, Rog. Play Rabblemaster. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Opponent goes to 19. Simian Spirit Guide. Cast Infernal Plunge. Sack Goblin token. Play second Goblin Rabblemaster. Luxsack, Ancient Tomb, or City of Traders off the top to play Legion Warboss. Well, we did a thing, folks. You can't say that we didn't do a thing. Play your 2/2 and pass opponent. Chalice on 1. Why did you not keep Glaring Fleshraker? So we make 2 goblins. Go to attacks. Both of these Goblin Rabblmasters now get bigger for each creature. My opponent takes 7. They are dead on board. My opponent has outs to not be dead. A Glaring Fleshraker chain can do it. A Kozilek's command for some blockers could do it. But this is a lot of pressure. So there is a Sowing Mycospawn, meaning that my opponent can get a follow-up land here to play a second creature. That's probably enough for them to not die immediately. They'll probably end up at 3-ish life. I am going to call my opponent's lost their pilot error. Like, my opponent got rid of a Glaring Fleshraker that would have been a much stronger play than Chalice of the Void. So if they went turn 2, Glaring Fleshraker, turn 3, Sowing Mycospawn, trigger Fleshraker, get Gaia's Cradle or another colorless land, play another creature, like, I probably lose this one from here. Yeah, I am not playing another spell for 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. Yeah, we didn't win that by doing something broken. They lost that by making poor decisions. Pyrokinesis in. Magus of the Moon in. My opponent now thinks that Chalice on 1 is good against me. I board out Infernal Plunge and keep Rog, or do I board out Rog, keep Infernal Plunge? I could keep both and still just try to early Blood Moon my opponent. Get rid of some number of Guts and Legion War bosses. Yeah, I really do conceptually like the early Blood Moon here. If I'm keeping all the Rogs, maybe I keep Gut. Sure. And again, we see the downside of this just not being a standalone card. If this is a standalone card, maybe I can keep a hand that is standalone threat plus Fury something out of the way. Not this time. Turn 1 Blood Moon. We get rid of Infernal Plunge, it has no text. That is 2 Devourer of Destiny triggers again. Opponent will get a chance to redeem themselves. So my opponent has gotten rid of a lot of very reasonable cards. Nice. Ancient Tomb, take 2, Simian Spirit Guide, Blood Moon. So the Lotus Petal is gone, meaning that the Blood Moon has a higher than normal impact. My opponent got rid of 2 copies of Sowing Mycospawn, which is their tutor for the basic wastes in the deck. They did have basic forest already. That's a very strong reason to keep Sowing Mycospawn. Damn it. We're gonna play this land and pass here. Sundering Eruption is awkward because it gives my opponent access to basic wastes over basic forest. That is Eldrazi Repurposer, sure. So that gives my opponent colorless mana. I can Pyrokinesis both of those away on my own turn, pretty reasonably. Ah, Rog, hello. Right on time. This is a land, I think. Pyrokinesis, 3 and 1. Done. I think I pitched the Rog over the Plunge on the off chance that I need to hardcast a Pyrokinesis later. Yep. Sure. So this creature is dismemberable in this window right here. Doesn't happen though. Then in for 1. There's still a colorless mana, but I took the body out of play. And colorless matters a lot for Devourer of Destiny. This is a scary turn though. Land drop from my opponent. Alright, that's a scary one. So I will absolutely just battle on in. Probably losing a goblin token here in exchange for a decent chunk of damage. But there is a very real chance that this one is just slipping away. Take 5, go to 14, then I'll pass turn. So as soon as my opponent can cast their first colorless spell, they are going to be open to casting future colorless spells. Alright. Rabble time. Now I get 2 goblin tokens. And everybody is here to party. Oh wow, opponent just eating the 5 again. They might just actually have to do that. Yeah, actually, I think I like that. The only way they win is doing something unfair, right? Yeah, I think the only way they win is doing something unfair with Glaring Fleshraker, so they need to cast a colorless spell or devoid spell and then chain multiple spells together to be able to block both of these the following turn. Yeah, I like the no block. But I can't help but feel like my opponent had more game in this than it appears from my side of the battlefield. Alright, opening hand here does not have functional mana. This one just automatically has to be a mulligan. This second hand is quite good, and I just have to decide how safe I want to play it versus Wasteland. I think because Blood Moon turns off this sacrifice ability, I keep the 3rd land. This is a surprisingly tough decision on the draw, wherein my opponent could just randomly fetch basics, play around the moon effect innately. I think I keep single moon double threat rather than double moon single threat, and we'll just see whether or not that decision is paid off. I'm worried about keeping moon and then just being behind on board and not having the ability to shift into the aggressor role. Is a basic swamp. This is exactly one of the things that I feared. Am I even blood mooning now? This is a game-defining decision. Against Entomb into Animate Dead or Reanimate, the Blood Moon does not matter. I think I'm just playing dudes. I think this is just 2 Goblin Bros hanging out, having a good time, and we hope that this is good enough. 19. No end of turn troll cycle. That's good. White black. Just Grief Ephemerate Scam. Mono black with fetch lands for Stalactite Stalker. Goldred's Edict. Sure. And that edict specifically gets around my tokens. Could be mono black control, I guess. Yeah. Send them. 16. I can play this as additional threats if I have to. A little costly because it does cost me City of Terror. Oh yeah, no, there is reanimate nonsense over there. Sure. There is a reanimate. You got it. Oh, that's really fucking good. We'll cast this as the land. I guess blow up the untapped swamp. This is a sorcery. I do have to do this now. Oh, cool. And this probably just means that shoving over the course of 2 turns is successful at killing my opponent. So make my 1/1. Send in with everybody. Turn one of them into a 2/2. My opponent goes to 4. And between the onboard goblins and the surprise Sokenzen, which could be relevant for one of the first times on this channel, we probably just have lethal. I guess a Toxic Deluge could be okay. No, Toxic Deluge, it doesn't do it. They pay 2 life to kill my stuff. Rograkh. Sure. Alright, some math. The opponent is effectively at 8 life, assuming this block. So we get block and block. So get block and block, take 4. But my opponent is gaining 4, so that is not lethal. Might have been a turn early on using this. 4 power lifelinker was not on my bingo card. I guess it should have been. Yeah, fuck, and attacks this combat if able. Fuck. Alright, so, yeah. Fuck, I could have played this to reduce the cost on that. Oh well, I think I want this in hand, though. I'm gonna go to combat. Make my creature. That one has to attack. It's attacking into the Rograkh. I don't think I want to give up the Legion Warboss on this attack, so I think I'm going to attack with everybody but Legion Warboss and give up 1 more token. Maybe I am just attacking with everybody, or 5. Maybe I am attacking with everybody because the Legion Warboss dying may end up being relevant, or like stopping the forced attack each combat. My opponent ends up at 2 here. And I've got outs. It's just spooky. I guess it's kind of equally spooky for us, right? Although my opponent has, probably at least 3 relevant cards in hand. If they attack for 4, do that trigger, and then play some creature, they're probably okay. Probably. Oh shit, it's both of them. So I'm at 10. Rograkh triggers. There's a Nethergoyf and Grief. Grief I already expected. Nethergoyf is not a surprise. Gone on record saying that I'm not the biggest fan of Nethergoyf in these mono black decks. Ooh, fuck. Yeah, lifelink. Offset that. Yep, nope, makes sense. That was lethal if not for the 1 ring. I think you trample. No trample, no trample. If I hold this in hand and it eats a Grief, that's awkward. If I put it in play and it eats a targeted removal spell, that's awkward. I think I play both. Then I play around a Sheoldred's Edict on it. Pass turn. Opponent did not draw cards with the 1 ring. Presumably meaning that they have outs to my board already, which is like not good for me. So as of right now, I do just have lethal. I get to attack whatever Rograkh blocks I throw at my opponent's face. They're using Ancient Tomb. Bowmasters, getting rid of Rog. Then Sheoldred's Edict as the follow-up would do it. Then Sheoldred's Edict as the follow-up does it. Opponent can attack me with all that stuff. So I have to throw 2 things here and here. I take 6, I go to 4. And 7 damage seems tough. That does not do it, unfortunately. Well, damn. Alright. I am going to start by removing the Blood Moons and the Magus of the Moons just before I think about literally anything else. My opponent is on Mono Swamps over there. I would start with getting 4 copies of Unlicensed Hearse into the deck list, probably playing the Ley Lines as well. I could play 2 Pyrokinesis. Those will sometimes answer my opponent's creatures. Maybe that's not actually good enough. And I get to mess around with some amount of this stuff. Probably Rogs. Keep some Infernal Plunge dreams alive. I don't know that I'm going to play Pyrokinesis. I am very on the fence about that. Like, it's just not going to answer the grief-sized threats. City Spirit Guide, Rabblemaster, Attack for 1, Simian Spirit Guide, Infernal Plunge, Rabblemaster, or Gut. Yeah. I mean, okay. Yaw. Yaw. Punchies. Swing in for 1. 19. Infernal Plunge. Backing the Goblin. Get to 3 mana. The dream is top the red source to play Gut as well, I think. And hopefully this just comes out of the gates faster than what my opponent's deck is capable of doing. A, like, Dark Ritual, Entomb, Reanimate situation can beat me. That sucks. Fury off the top, maybe? Okay, sure. That is not a playable Magic the Gathering card. So I create goblins, they die instantly to the Plague Engineer ability. My Goblin Rival Masters are forced to attack. Luckily, they do buff each other. So my opponent can kill one of these and take 2, or still just take 4 damage. Oh, there's more. Fatal Push. Sure. Alright, concede. We still do put up a positive record despite the fact that we were playing with Infernal Plunge. So I think there were some good lessons in this league. Like, we did see the cards do their thing. But ultimately, these are not standalone cards. And this is a deck that is built with standalone cards. The idea is that anytime you draw one of your 3-drops, it is just a powerful must-answer card. And every card that you put in your deck that looks like this may give you some upside, but the downside of these being bad top decks and these not necessarily lining up well with your opening hand, I think is just far too high. I do not believe we successfully triggered Gut in the entire league. I think this was a league where, like, very careful sequencing and planning on my end gave me pretty good opportunities to win the games. I think a couple of our opponents made some critical errors. You know, there was some awkward deck building with the Ground Seal Mystic Sanctuary line, for example, and some of the Eldrazi opening hand, Once Upon a Time, Eldrazi, Power of Destiny, there we go. Triggers I don't think were handled appropriately. But generally speaking, if Eldrazi is going to be all over the place, having access to 8 Blood Moon effects does seem like an okay place to be. Sundering Eruption was pretty solid this league, although sometimes awkward alongside the Blood Moon in situations where we know that our opponent had more than one basic. The core deck idea gets a thumbs down, but Moon Stompy as a general archetype, I think will probably get a thumbs up, assuming we get some sort of grief ban in August and we don't have to deal with Psychic Frog anymore, which is a huge problem for this deck. Something that looks like this, minus these 8 cards, is probably somewhat viable. And once you take away those 8, like, Gut doesn't make sense, and then once, you know, those are gone, maybe like Legion Warboss goes too, but, you know, like, the general shell here looks pretty good. Folks, if you need cards, consider checking out my sponsor to support my channel, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!